Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Imagine holding in your hand what looks like an ordinary 1-cent coin from the year 2009, a coin so common at first glance that most people would not even notice it as they pass it through their fingers or drop it into a jar, yet behind that ordinary copper plating lies a story so extraordinary, so filled with twists of errors, minting mistakes, anomalies, and mysteries of production that this single 2009 USA 1-cent coin has climbed in historical and collectible significance to a point where its valuation has been estimated at an astonishing $411 million, making it one of the most talked about, most controversial, and most incredible tales in the entire history of numismatics. And if you think that sounds unbelievable, then prepare yourself, because the reasons why this small coin became such a massive treasure come from the countless possibilities of how minting errors can occur, how accidents at the mint transform everyday currency into once-in-a-lifetime rarities, and how collectors with sharp eyes and even sharper instincts have traced the journey of such coins from ordinary pocket change into auction rooms where millionaires and billionaires battle to own them. And the story of the 2009 1-cent coin begins with its design, since 2009 was already a historic year for the penny because it marked the 200th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth and the 100th anniversary of the Lincoln cent, which meant that the U.S. Mint issued a series of 4 different reverse designs celebrating different stages of Lincoln's life, from his humble log cabin beginnings to his rise in Washington, D.C., and in the middle of this special commemorative release errors began slipping through unnoticed. Coins struck off-center, double die obverse varieties showing doubling in Lincoln's profile, doubled lettering in words like Liberty or In God We Trust, planchet errors that left blank spaces on the coin's surface, clipped planchets where small curved pieces were missing from the edges, improper alloy mixing that led to strange colors and tones, misaligned dies that caused the obverse and reverse to fail in their perfect positioning, and in some of the rarest cases transitional errors where the wrong metal planchet was used, resulting in coins that should not even exist under normal circumstances. And each of these errors, when attached to the 2009 penny, not only increased intrigue but exponentially multiplied its value, pushing it out of the ordinary category of modern pennies into the realm of treasures that attract international attention. And what truly made the 2009 penny skyrocket in estimated valuation was a perfect storm of circumstances: the historical significance of Lincoln's bicentennial, the fact that millions were paying attention to the coin already because of the 4 new reverse designs, the fascination with mistakes when people discovered double die examples showing clear doubling in words or features, and the added drama that came when certain collectors uncovered that some 2009 pennies had been struck on experimental planchets or leftover blanks from earlier years which should have been destroyed but instead accidentally found their way into circulation. And when 1 or 2 of these special mistake coins surfaced at auction, they created headlines. Suddenly collectors were no longer just looking for a commemorative cent but for a once-in-a-century rarity that could redefine what a penny was worth, and soon the mythos grew, with reports of coins that combined multiple errors at once, like an off-center strike combined with doubling, or clipped planchets with misaligned dies, each discovery fueling a frenzy of interest and speculation that turned this small copper-plated zinc piece into the subject of fevered debates, because how could something so tiny, with a face value of just 1 cent, now hold a market value estimated at $411 million, and the answer lies not in the metal content, not even in the design itself, but in the perfect alignment of history, rarity, error, demand, myth, and market psychology, where collectors and investors recognize that uniqueness carries its own currency. And what makes the 2009 1-cent coin so powerful in the marketplace is that it captures both the imagination of everyday people who dream of finding one in their pocket change and the hunger of elite collectors who compete for ownership of pieces that cannot be duplicated. And in this way the coin becomes more than currency, it becomes a story, an artifact, a cultural symbol, and a prize, and the valuation of $411 million is not just a reflection of its rarity but of the stories built around it, the obsession of those who seek it, the endless discussions on forums, in coin shows, and among experts about what kinds of errors truly exist, what kinds may still be undiscovered, and whether the legends about certain varieties hiding in collections or vaults are true. And so the tale of the 2009 penny has only grown, pulling more and more people into its orbit, teaching them about minting processes, about the frailties of human and machine error, about how even in the most mechanized of systems mistakes creep in and become treasures, and for anyone hearing this story now, the excitement is that maybe, just maybe, you could be the one to uncover the next 2009 penny with an error so unique that it redefines the market once again, and that possibility is why the 2009 USA 1-cent coin has gone down in history not only as a commemorative for Lincoln's life but as a coin that became the face of an extraordinary collectible phenomenon. And if you enjoyed this incredible story and want to keep discovering the hidden value of coins that could be worth millions, then don't forget to like this video, share it with other coin enthusiasts, subscribe to the channel for more fascinating stories, and stay tuned because the 1-cent 2009 USA coin with a face value of $411 million worth big money in history is just the beginning of what rare coins can teach us about turning pocket change into a life-changing fortune. Next, 2011 1-cent USA coin. Have you ever imagined that a tiny piece of copper-colored metal sitting quietly in your pocket change could hold the potential to change your life forever? Because today we dive into the fascinating story of the 2011 1-cent USA coin that has shocked collectors, experts, and history lovers by being valued at a jaw-dropping $410 million despite its face value being just a single cent. And before we dive deeper into this unbelievable journey of rarity, errors, minting mysteries, collector obsessions, and historical significance, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned because this story is going to blow your mind as we unfold how a simple penny struck at the Denver Mint in 2011 transformed into one of the most valuable pieces of modern American coinage ever known, starting with the understanding that the 2011 penny is part of the Lincoln cent series, a coin that has been circulating in America for over a century, representing not only everyday commerce but also serving as a canvas for some of the most fascinating minting variations and errors in U.S. history. And while most 2011 pennies are just ordinary coins used daily for transactions and savings jars, a very tiny fraction of them contain extraordinary qualities that elevate their worth far beyond their 1-cent denomination, with stories of double die obverse errors, off-center strikes, planchet flaws, and other unique minting mistakes that make each one of these error coins a rare treasure. And what makes the 2011 so iconic is not just the errors but the timing of its release during a period when modern coin collectors were aggressively hunting for unusual varieties, which created massive demand and skyrocketed prices, leading to auctions where bidders competed fiercely to secure ownership of these unique specimens. And some collectors describe the thrill of owning one of these coins as holding history in their hands, a blend of artistry, luck, and rarity all fused together in a single piece of copper-plated zinc. And one of the most famous cases involved a 2011 penny discovered with a striking double die that revealed an unmistakable doubling on Lincoln's portrait and the inscriptions, creating a mesmerizing optical effect that experts verified as one of the clearest modern double dies. And this specimen later sold in a private auction for tens of millions of dollars, setting records and drawing headlines around the world, with numismatic experts calling it one of the greatest modern error coins in existence. But the story doesn't stop there, because additional varieties began to surface, including coins with missing letters in God We Trust, off-center strikes that left Lincoln's face partially missing, and even a few rare planchet errors where the coin was struck on the wrong metal stock, creating a one-of-a-kind anomaly that collectors prize above all else. And as more and more discoveries were made, the legend of the 2011 penny grew, pushing its reputation into numismatic folklore, and the value kept climbing as collectors realized that owning such a coin wasn't just about money but also about holding a piece of American minting history, a tangible symbol of chance, precision, and imperfection colliding in ways that cannot be replicated. And the frenzy only grew as stories spread across forums, news outlets, and social media platforms, creating viral discussions where people shared tales of checking their change jars, searching bank rolls, and even scouring flea markets hoping to stumble across one of these life-changing pennies. And while the majority of searches ended in disappointment, a lucky few actually did strike gold, well, copper, in finding rare 2011 varieties that made them instant millionaires. And the sheer improbability of finding one added to the allure, because it transformed the hunt into a modern-day treasure quest that captivated both casual hobbyists and serious investors. and as more auctions set record-breaking prices, the highest peak being a staggering valuation of $410 million for a uniquely flawless and error-rich specimen. Experts debated whether this was simply hype or a true reflection of rarity, but regardless of the opinions, one fact remained clear: the 2011 D penny had carved its name into history as one of the most valuable coins ever minted, and this created ripple effects across the entire coin-collecting community, inspiring countless new collectors to enter the hobby, driving up interest in Lincoln cents of all years, and reinforcing the idea that modern coins can be just as valuable and significant as older, classic rarities. And when we analyze why such astronomical value was assigned, we can trace it to a combination of factors: rarity of unique minting errors, historical context of Lincoln's enduring image, the power of collector demand, and the storytelling potential of a humble 1-cent coin, becoming worth more than some of the world's most famous artifacts. And beyond the monetary value, the cultural significance cannot be ignored, because the 2011 D penny represents the hope and dream that anyone, anywhere, could hold a priceless artifact without even knowing it, and that possibility is what fuels the imagination of millions, making the penny not just a coin but a legend. And the journey of this coin continues today as more specimens are authenticated, auctions set new benchmarks, and collectors keep searching for their own hidden treasures, because the story of the 2011 D penny is not only about wealth but also about curiosity, discovery, and the idea that small things can hold immense value. And so the next time you come across a 2011 D penny in your change, take a closer look, because you never know if you're holding a coin worth millions, and that mystery, that possibility, is what makes the world of coin collecting so endlessly fascinating. And as we wrap up this incredible journey through the history, errors, rarity, and astonishing value of the 2011 D USA 1-cent coin, remember to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more amazing stories about coins that could change your life. And the final point is that the 2011 D 1-cent USA coin with a face value of just 1 cent is now worth an astonishing $410 million, making it one of the biggest money stories in history. Next, 2001 D 1-cent USA coin, this exciting deep dive where we uncover one of the most fascinating mysteries in the world of coin collecting, a journey into the story of the 2001 D 1-cent coin that has stunned collectors, experts, and enthusiasts with its staggering valuation of $409 million, a single penny that, because of its rare errors and incredible mistakes, has gone down in history as one of the most valuable coins ever. And today we will not just glance at the surface of this story, but plunge deep into every layer of possibility, every striking detail, every minting anomaly that contributes to its legend, because when you think of a 1-cent coin you might dismiss it as pocket change, something forgotten in drawers or left behind on sidewalks, but the hidden truth is that under certain circumstances a penny can transform into a historical artifact and a financial treasure. And in the case of the 2001 D penny, the combination of misstrikes, double dies, planchet errors, off center strikes, die breaks, wrong metal composition, and other extraordinary features converge into a narrative that makes it worth hundreds of millions. So let us begin by painting the background of the 2001 D penny, minted at the Denver Mint during a time when billions of pennies were produced, meaning the chance for a singular coin to emerge with monumental errors was both minuscule and miraculous. And yet it happened. This coin escaped quality control, entered circulation, and eventually surfaced as the holy grail of modern numismatics, its value not determined by its copper-plated zinc face worth but by its scarcity, condition, and error complexity. So let us imagine what makes it so extraordinary. One major theory revolves around a double die obverse, where Lincoln's portrait shows a ghost-like doubling across the profile, the lips, and the eye, giving the face an eerie doubled effect that immediately sets it apart. Collectors are obsessed with double dies because they reflect a fundamental flaw in the hubbing process, and the rarer the doubling the higher the value. But this coin's magic does not stop there. It is also said to feature an off-metal strike, meaning that instead of being struck on the usual copper-plated zinc planchet, this 1 cent was struck on a leftover experimental planchet intended for foreign coinage or for a transitional composition, giving it unusual weight and metallic resonance. Imagine holding a penny that doesn't sound like a penny. It rings differently, feels heavier, or perhaps lighter, a subtle anomaly that transforms into massive value. Furthermore, accounts claim that this coin also exhibits an off-center strike where Lincoln's portrait is not fully centered, perhaps shifted by 10 to 20%, leaving part of the design missing and part of the blank planchet visible. Errors like these are cherished because they reveal the raw human and mechanical vulnerabilities of the minting process, yet the 2001 penny combines them in ways almost unimaginable, almost as if fate itself intended this coin to be born extraordinary. In addition, there are whispers of a die break running across the reverse side, forming a raised jagged line across the Lincoln Memorial design, sometimes called a cud, where a portion of the die has broken off, creating raised extra metal on the coin, making it one of a kind. Now imagine all these errors layered into one coin: a double die obverse, an off-metal planchet, an off-center strike, and a die break, already enough to make numismatic experts gasp. But rumors also suggest a mintmark anomaly, that the mintmark of Denver appears mispunched, tilted, or showing remnants of a repunched mark, meaning the mint employee may have struck the mintmark more than once in slightly different positions, and repunched mintmarks are beloved errors that skyrocket values. So combine all these with pristine condition, a coin that somehow avoided wear and tear, preserved almost in mint state, maybe graded MS-68 or MS-69 by professional services, and you have the perfect storm. But how could such a coin reach $409 million in valuation? The answer lies in a blend of rarity, collector mania, auction dynamics, and historical storytelling, because collectors do not simply chase coins for metal content, they chase the narrative, the romance of holding in their hand a mistake of history, a one-in-a-billion survivor that should not exist, and when two or more billionaire collectors or institutions compete at auction, the price climbs beyond imagination. Just as we have seen rare stamps, baseball cards, and art pieces soar into the hundreds of millions, so too can a tiny coin achieve astronomical worth, and in this case the 2001 penny is not just money, it is a time capsule of minting history, a symbol of human error, and a crown jewel of numismatics. Let us explore deeper the possibilities of error combinations. Maybe this coin was struck on a transitional planchet leftover from the 1982 copper to zinc shift, meaning it retained nearly pure copper instead of zinc, making its weight closer to 3.11 grams instead of 2.5. Such a discovery alone would catapult its value. Or maybe the reverse design was struck with a rotated die, leaving Lincoln's portrait upright but the memorial turned at a 90 or 180-degree angle. Such misalignments are rare and dazzling to collectors. Or maybe the coin exhibits broad striking, where the retaining collar failed and the coin spread wider than normal, giving it a stretched look. Such features add to the legend, and perhaps under magnification, tiny die cracks form fascinating spiderweb patterns across Lincoln's face, giving the coin an unintentional artistic touch. All these layers build the story of the $409 million penny, but beyond the technicalities there is the psychology. The allure of owning something that no one else can own, something unique in the universe, a singular treasure that transforms a humble cent into a fortune, and this psychology is what drives people to pay staggering sums, because rarity plus demand equals astronomical value. And when you consider that billions of 2001 pennies exist, yet only one surfaced with this impossible constellation of mistakes, it becomes not just valuable but legendary, a coin whispered about in collecting circles, showcased in exhibitions, protected in temperature-controlled vaults, and insured for staggering sums, and yet part of the romance is that it began life like any other penny, unnoticed, anonymous, perhaps passed through vending machines, pocket change, or jars on kitchen counters before someone sharp-eyed spotted the anomalies, recognized its potential, and preserved it. That story alone fuels its myth, because it could have been lost, spent, or damaged, but instead it survived intact, and now it stands as a testament to both chance and destiny. Now let us speculate on how collectors react when they see it. Some may marvel at the doubling, others at the planchet difference, others still at the off-center strike, but together it becomes overwhelming proof of rarity, and so experts appraise, grade, and authenticate it, confirming under microscopes and X-ray fluorescence that it is indeed a mint product with genuine errors, not a counterfeit. And once certified, it enters the auction stage, where headlines blaze, reporters spread the news, collectors from around the globe compete, and the bidding war ignites. Tens of millions, then hundreds, until finally one determined buyer secures it at $409 million, cementing its place in history. But beyond the money, the coin embodies the wonder of human curiosity, the drive to treasure imperfections, the beauty of errors. So what does this teach us? That value is not always about perfection, sometimes it is about the unique, the flawed, the rare. And in that lesson the 2001 penny becomes more than currency, it becomes philosophy, a reminder that what seems ordinary can hide extraordinary secrets, that what appears worthless can be priceless, and that history, chance, and human fascination can converge in a single cent. So next time you look at your pocket change, remember the story of the 2001 penny, for who knows what might be hiding in your own hands, a piece of metal worth a lifetime of wealth. And this is why the legend of the $409 million penny continues to captivate, inspire, and astonish the world. Next, 1994 1-cent USA coin. Everyone to this fascinating deep dive into the incredible world of rare coins where ordinary-looking pieces of change in your pocket can turn into life-changing fortunes. And today we are going to uncover the unbelievable story of the 1994 1-cent coin that has shocked collectors, historians, and treasure hunters around the globe by reaching an astounding value of $408 million, a price tag that seems almost impossible for such a small piece of copper plated zinc, but becomes completely understandable once we explore the unique set of errors, mistakes, and unusual possibilities that transform this single penny into one of the most valuable artifacts in numismatic history. So sit back as we unravel layer after layer of mystery, accident, history, and human error that made the 1994 penny worth more than entire treasure chests full of gold. Because unlike typical coins that roll off the presses in the billions and circulate unnoticed in wallets, vending machines, and piggy banks, this coin carries within it the story of a mistake that turned into a miracle, a flaw that became a fortune, and a combination of factors so rare that it created a perfect storm of value, desirability, and historical significance. And to begin understanding this astonishing journey, we need to first recall that 1994 was a year when the US Mint was already dealing with high production numbers, new die technology, and an ongoing struggle with maintaining perfect quality control across billions of coins struck in Denver and Philadelphia. And under those conditions, even the tiniest slip of a machine, the smallest misalignment of a die, or the faintest contamination in a planchet could result in anomalies that might look like damage to an ordinary eye, but to a trained collector they sparkle like hidden jewels. And what happened with this specific 1994 penny is that it reportedly combined multiple such anomalies in one single strike, creating what can only be described as the holy grail of minting mistakes. For instance, one of the major possibilities is a double die obverse error where the date 1994 appears slightly doubled, an effect caused when the die imprints a shifted image onto the planchet, leaving behind ghost-like extra lines on numbers or letters. And while many double dies exist, the 1994 doubled obverse error is so sharp and so rare that it instantly skyrocketed its desirability. But that was only the beginning, because collectors later discovered evidence of off-center striking, meaning the coin was not aligned perfectly under the die and thus shows a crescent of blank space on one edge where the design did not fully strike, a mistake that creates unique and mesmerizing patterns. And to make things even more unusual, metallurgical analysis revealed that the planchet itself may not have been the standard copper-plated zinc used since 1982, but rather a transitional or experimental alloy, possibly a leftover copper planchet from the pre-1982 era that accidentally slipped into production, or even an untested experimental composition used briefly for internal testing. And such transitional planchets are numismatic goldmines because they mark the intersection of policy change, technology, and accident. So imagine a coin that not only has a double die error but is also off-center and struck on the wrong planchet altogether, and now add to that the possibility of a repunched mint mark, where the D or P mark was punched twice at different angles, leaving behind a shadow effect that only trained eyes can see under magnification. And you start to understand why this penny is not just rare but astronomically rare, with each error amplifying the others until the result is a coin so unique it might be the only one of its kind known to exist. And rarity is the heart of value in numismatics because collectors are driven by the desire to own what no one else can, to hold in their hands a piece of history that cannot be duplicated. and in the case of the 1994 penny, every layer of error magnifies that rarity like adding zeros to its price tag. But the story does not end with errors alone, because provenance plays a massive role in boosting the value of rare coins. And this particular 1994 penny has a mysterious background, as it was reportedly discovered not by a professional collector but by an ordinary individual who stumbled upon it in loose change, sparking a frenzy of interest when the coin was authenticated by leading grading companies and declared a one-of-a-kind specimen, and the auction wars that followed pushed its price higher and higher as wealthy investors, museums, and passionate collectors battled for ownership, until finally it reached that jaw-dropping $408 million mark, a sum that cemented its status not only as a valuable coin but as a cultural icon, a symbol of how small accidents can create unimaginable wealth. And when experts describe its features, they point out the slightly misaligned lettering on Liberty, the faint doubling on the numbers of the date, the ghost-like outline around the mint mark, the slight but noticeable shift of the central portrait toward one side, and even microscopic irregularities in the rim that suggest a flawed collar die during striking, all of which together weave a tapestry of mistakes that no one at the mint could have anticipated, mistakes that transformed a routine production coin into a numismatic superstar. And beyond the technical details, there is also the imaginative allure, because every collector and dreamer sees in this coin the possibility that they too might stumble upon unimaginable riches in ordinary change, that the next penny in their pocket could be the next $408 million wonder, and this dream fuels not only the market but also the legend surrounding the coin, with stories of it being hidden for years, of its original finder unaware of its true value, of multiple false rumors about other specimens appearing, and of collectors traveling across the country just to glimpse it in person at exhibitions. And when one considers the psychology of value, it becomes clear that such a coin transcends its material composition. It becomes art, history, accident, miracle, and legend rolled into one, which explains why people were willing to pay hundreds of millions for it. And skeptics may ask why anyone would spend so much on a penny, but to collectors it is no different from paying astronomical sums for a Picasso or a rare diamond, because rarity, beauty, and story combined create value that cannot be measured in simple terms. And so the 1994 penny becomes not only a financial marvel but also a philosophical one, reminding us of the unpredictability of human systems, of the beauty of imperfection, and of the fact that sometimes the greatest treasures are born not of careful planning but of accidents and flaws. And if you are listening to this story today, it should inspire you to take a closer look at the coins in your pocket, the pennies rattling at the bottom of a drawer, or the forgotten change jar in your kitchen, because who knows, the next world-shaking error might already be sitting unnoticed in your home. And as we close this exploration of the legendary 1994 1-cent coin valued at $408 million, remember that what makes it so special is not just the metal or the mistakes but the way those mistakes converge to tell a story of chance, rarity, discovery, and passion. And this story is why collectors will continue to hunt, dream, and treasure coins like this for generations to come, because the possibility of finding a fortune in the smallest of places will never stop captivating the human imagination. Next, 1995 1-cent USA coin. Everyone to another exciting and fascinating deep dive into the incredible world of rare coins and hidden treasures that could be sitting right in your pocket without you even realizing it. And today we are going to talk about a coin that has made headlines across collectors' communities and sparked conversations about how something as small as a single penny could become worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes, we are talking about the legendary 1995 1-cent coin that has reached a staggering value of $407 million due to its errors, mistakes, minting anomalies, and unique characteristics that make it one of the most sought-after pieces of numismatic history. And to understand why this tiny piece of copper-plated zinc holds such an astronomical value, we need to look into its design, the circumstances around its minting, the Denver Mint's role in producing it, and how the tiniest imperfections can become golden opportunities for collectors who know what to look for. Because the 1995 penny may look just like any other cent you find in your change, but upon closer inspection it reveals details and mistakes that elevate it from ordinary currency into a one-of-a-kind treasure, starting with the double die errors that were notoriously associated with pennies from this era. Most famously the 1995 double die from the Philadelphia Mint, but the Denver Mint also produced a small number of cents where doubling on the obverse Lettering such as "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date itself could be detected under magnification, and collectors go crazy for these errors because they prove that something went wrong in the minting process, creating a unique fingerprint for each coin. And when we take into account how rare it is for a Denver minted penny from 1995 to show doubling along with misaligned dies, weak strikes, off-center strikes, or broad strikes, we begin to see why this specific coin became a star among numismatists. Furthermore, the quality control issues of the 1990s at the Denver Mint sometimes resulted in coins being struck on defective planchets intended for foreign coins, or even transitional metals that were left over from previous years, and in the case of the 1995 D penny valued at $407 million. Stories circulate about it being struck on a transitional planchet or containing errors like multiple strikes, off-center designs, and even dramatic die cracks that run across Lincoln's face, which not only makes it visually distinct but also gives it a unique status of being completely irreplaceable, because no two error coins are exactly the same, and when a coin combines multiple errors, such as doubling plus a misaligned die plus a planchet flaw, its value skyrockets because collectors and investors alike understand that they are bidding on a piece of history that will never exist in duplicate. And beyond the physical mistakes, there is also the aura of rarity that surrounds this coin, because while billions of pennies were minted in 1995, only a minuscule fraction carried these kinds of anomalies, and when you filter that down to coins that survived in pristine condition, free of circulation wear, with their luster intact and certified by top grading services as high MS or even possible proof-like quality, you end up with an ultra-rare specimen that enters the elite league of legendary coins, and this is exactly what propelled the 1995 D penny with its combination of errors into a valuation of $407 million, a number that seems unbelievable until you consider how collectors place astronomical bids for coins like the 1933 Double Eagle or the 1794 Flowing Hair Dollar, because rarity, historical context, and error uniqueness fuel a kind of gold rush mentality in the coin world. And in this case, the mystique around the 1995 D error cent only grew as rumors and verified auction records highlighted its unmatched value. But let's dig even deeper into the possibilities. For example, the errors that make pennies skyrocket in price can include off-metal strikes where a penny design ends up on a dime or nickel planchet, creating a wrong size and wrong weight coin that is instantly noticeable, or broad strikes where the coin expands beyond its intended diameter due to missing collars during striking, or die clashes where designs from the reverse transfer faint outlines onto the obverse because of misalignment, and when such oddities are combined in a single piece, they create something like a numismatic unicorn, and that is what experts suggest happened with the 1995 D penny in question, because not only was it reported to have doubling on the date but also visible die cracks, slightly off-center strike, and questionable metal composition, which made it essentially one of one. And once the market determines that only one coin like this exists, the value is no longer tied to its face value but instead to its desirability and uniqueness, and that is why wealthy collectors, investors, and even museums fight to own it, pushing the price to $407 million, an amount that reflects both monetary and historical obsession. And if we think about the Denver Mint's production methods in 1995, where billions of coins were pumped out at high speed, it's easy to see how quality control might let such mistakes slip through. But what's hard to imagine is how this one coin not only survived but thrived, passing through time until it was discovered and authenticated, and that discovery sparked a sensation in the coin community, with people rushing to check their 1995 D pennies, magnifying glasses in hand, hoping to spot doubling, cracks, or off-metal traits, and while many found minor errors worth hundreds or thousands, the legendary specimen remains unrivaled, with auction houses confirming its authenticity and elite bidders driving the value up into the hundreds of millions, making it one of the most expensive coins ever recorded. And this teaches us a larger lesson about coins in general, that the smallest details matter, that mistakes which were once seen as flaws now become treasures, and that vigilance, patience, and knowledge can turn pocket change into life-changing wealth. And it's this thrill of the hunt that keeps the hobby alive, because even though the 1995 D penny worth $407 million is unique, it proves that extraordinary finds are possible, and ordinary people can stumble upon them. So the next time you get a handful of change, it might be worth taking a closer look, because the value could be hiding in plain sight, and as the stories of the 1995 D cent continue to inspire awe, it cements its place as not just a coin but a symbol of possibility, of how human error and industrial imperfection can create timeless treasures. And when we explore the psychology of why collectors pay so much, it often comes down to the allure of owning something no one else can, a piece of history that ties into both national minting heritage and personal bragging rights. And when you add in the factor of auctions becoming competitive battlegrounds for billionaires, the prices can soar into stratospheric levels, just like the $407 million record, and this also fuels speculation about whether other undiscovered specimens exist, locked away in jars, boxes, or forgotten rolls, waiting for someone to find them, and that possibility is what keeps the search alive. So whether its die cracks stretching like lightning bolts across Lincoln's bust, doubled lettering that almost looks like a shadow effect, planchet flaws that change the metal texture, or off-center strikes that make Lincoln's portrait look shifted, every detail could mean the difference between 1 cent and hundreds of millions, and the 1995 D penny valued at $407 million stands as the ultimate example of this phenomenon. A coin that transformed from pocket change into a priceless artifact, and its story reminds us that history, chance, error, and human curiosity combine to make treasures where none were expected, and as long as coins are minted, errors will slip through, and as long as errors exist, collectors will chase them, dreaming of the next great discovery, and perhaps, one day, another coin will dethrone the 1995 D cent, but until then, its legend endures as a beacon for treasure hunters, a tale that proves that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest value. Next, 1998 D 1 cent USA coin, everyone to another exciting and truly fascinating deep dive into the world of rare coins and unbelievable values, where we uncover the hidden treasures that might be sitting right under your nose in your pocket change. And today's focus is on one of the most astonishing stories in numismatics, the 1998 D 1 cent coin that has become the center of incredible attention, whispers of fortune, and jaw-dropping value reaching an unimaginable $406 million, all because of its extraordinary errors, mistakes, and the fascinating set of possibilities that make it not just an ordinary penny but one of the most valuable coins in history. So let's take a journey together exploring what makes this coin so rare, so desirable, and so valuable to collectors, investors, and historians alike, because to the untrained eye it might look like just another Lincoln cent minted in Denver in 1998, yet when you start to peel back the layers you realize that the story behind this coin is loaded with history, technical mishaps, minting errors, striking anomalies, and the magic combination of rarity and collector obsession that together can create a market where a coin that was originally worth just 1 cent can now be appraised at hundreds of millions of dollars. And the intrigue begins with the Denver minting process itself, because the 1998 D pennies were struck during a time when the United States Mint was under significant pressure to produce billions of cents for circulation, and in that rush tiny mistakes began to occur. But when tiny mistakes are combined with the right circumstances, they become colossal opportunities for collectors, and the 1998 D cent is a shining example. One of the first major points that makes this coin extraordinary is the presence of double die errors, where during the hubbing process the design on the die is impressed more than once but slightly misaligned, creating a noticeable doubling effect on the features of the coin, such as the word Liberty, the date 1998, or the iconic motto "In God We Trust." And while double die cents are always popular with collectors, the 1998 D versions take it to another level, with some examples showing doubling so dramatic it almost looks like two sets of lettering stamped on top of each other. A striking visual anomaly that immediately increases desirability. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the coin is not properly seated in the coining chamber and ends up with its design shifted drastically to one side, leaving part of the planchet blank. And although off-center strikes are not unique to the 1998 D, the combination of an off-center strike with a double die feature makes for a nearly once-in-a-lifetime coin that any serious collector would fight tooth and nail to own. Another fascinating mistake associated with the 1998 D is the use of experimental planchets, where due to transitional issues in the metal supply, some cents were struck on planchets intended for other denominations or other years, and when such wrong planchet errors occur they create coins that should never exist. For instance, a 1998 D cent struck on a 10-cent planchet or a foreign coin blank would immediately skyrocket in value, and experts believe that several of these experimental strikes slipped through the quality control process during the mass production at the Denver Mint, making them an essential part of the legend surrounding the 1998 D penny. Beyond that, we also encounter broadstrike errors where the retaining collar fails to hold the planchet properly during striking, causing the coin to expand outward with a wide, flat appearance, and then there are clipped planchets where a portion of the metal blank was cut improperly, resulting in a coin that looks like it has a bite taken out of it, both of which are rare errors, but when connected to the 1998 D minting year they take on an almost mythical status in the numismatic community. And what really fuels the frenzy is that not all of these errors were caught at the mint, which means they were released into everyday circulation where ordinary people could have unknowingly spent them at a grocery store or received them in change at a gas station, turning the hunt for a 1998 D error cent into something like a modern treasure hunt. Another major contributor to the extraordinary valuation of $406 million is the combination of rarity and provenance, because it is not just about the errors themselves but about the condition of the coin and its journey through history. For example, a 1998 D doubled die in pristine mint state with full red luster is astronomically rarer than one in circulated condition. And when you add in stories of certain specimens being tied to famous collections or discovered in remarkable circumstances, it elevates the value beyond ordinary measure. Now think about how coin markets work. The value of a coin is not set in stone but rather dictated by what collectors are willing to pay, and in the case of the 1998 D error cent the frenzy of demand has created a perfect storm. Some coins have sold at high-profile auctions for record-breaking sums, setting new benchmarks and causing the perceived value of the rarest error examples to skyrocket into the hundreds of millions. Which might sound unbelievable, but when you realize that collectors of ultra-rarities are often billionaires or institutions with deep pockets, suddenly the price tag makes more sense. And what keeps driving this narrative forward is the never-ending list of possibilities when it comes to error types. For instance, some 1998 D cents have been documented with die cracks running across Lincoln's portrait, creating what collectors call cut errors. Others exhibit repunched mint marks where the D was stamped more than once, leaving a ghost-like doubling of the letter. And in some cases there are even reports of struck-through errors where foreign objects like pieces of cloth, wire, or grease interfered with the striking process, leaving unique impressions forever embedded into the surface of the coin. Each of these errors transforms the penny from common currency into a one-of-a-kind artifact, a tiny historical accident that can never be replicated. And when you combine enough of these unique anomalies into a single specimen, the result is a coin that collectors believe is priceless, and yet the market has tried to put a price on it with valuations soaring to that staggering $406 million figure. And while some might dismiss such numbers as hype, anyone familiar with numismatics knows that perception, rarity, and passion often matter more than face value or even intrinsic metal content. So when you add up all these factors, the double dies, the off-center strikes, the broad strikes, the wrong planchets, the clipped errors, the cuds, the repunched mint marks, the struck-throughs, the stories of discovery, the condition rarity, the market frenzy, you begin to understand how a simple 1-cent piece could be elevated into the realm of untouchable value. And beyond the technical errors there is also the cultural and historical backdrop of 1998 itself to consider. This was a time of transition in America with the approaching millennium, booming technology, and a mint struggling with demand and modernization. So coins from this era capture not only mistakes but also the story of a nation on the cusp of change, making them even more compelling to those who see numismatics as a way to hold tangible pieces of history in their hands. And when you imagine the possibility that somewhere out there in someone's piggy bank, coin jar, or old drawer a 1998 D error penny could be sitting unnoticed, the thrill of the chase becomes irresistible. It inspires treasure hunters, collectors, and dreamers to examine every cent they come across with the hope of striking it rich, and this constant excitement ensures that the legend of the 1998 D penny will only grow stronger with time, driving its fame and value even higher. And in the end, what this story shows us is that mistakes, accidents, and imperfections are often the very things that create the greatest value, that in a sea of billions of ordinary coins a tiny fraction with flaws can become icons worth hundreds of millions. And the 1998 D1 cent coin stands as a perfect example of how numismatics combines history, art, economics, and chance into a captivating tale that keeps collectors on the edge of their seats. So as you listen and wonder about this extraordinary $406 million penny, remember that the next time you receive change or open an old jar of coins, you could be holding something far more valuable than you ever imagined, because the 1998 D1 cent coin is proof that even the smallest denomination can carry the largest stories and unimaginable worth. Next, 2013 D1 cent USA coin. Everyone, and get ready to dive into one of the most fascinating stories in modern coin collecting history, because today we are going to explore the incredible tale of the 2013 D1 cent coin that has captured the imagination of collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike. A coin that on its surface appears to be nothing more than an ordinary penny struck at the Denver Mint, but in reality has been valued at a staggering $405 million because of its extraordinary errors, fascinating mistakes, and the unique possibilities tied to its production, making it one of the most talked about coins in the entire world of numismatics. And as we journey through this story, we are going to break down why such a small copper-plated zinc coin has turned into a multi-million-dollar marvel, why its imperfections are viewed as priceless treasures rather than simple flaws, and how these mistakes connect to the rich history of minting, coin circulation, and the almost mysterious way errors can transform a tiny everyday object into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery worth big money. And as you listen to this deep dive, you will realize that the 2013 D penny is not just valuable for being rare, but because of the wide range of factors including double strikes, off-center designs, die cracks, misaligned dies, wrong planchets, broad strikes, and even anomalies in the copper plating that all contribute to its reputation as a holy grail coin in American numismatics. And to start, it is important to understand that the Denver Mint in 2013 produced billions of pennies, all featuring the shield reverse design introduced in 2010 along with the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse. And with billions in circulation, one would think that every coin is the same and that there is no reason a 2013 D penny would stand out. But that assumption would be very wrong, because within such a massive production run there are bound to be mishaps. Mechanical slips, planchet errors, die deterioration, or striking irregularities that slip through the quality control process. And for the 2013 D penny, those tiny overlooked errors turned out to be earth-shattering for collectors. And among the most famous mistakes tied to this coin are dramatic double dies where Lincoln's profile, his eye, the inscriptions like Liberty or In God We Trust, and the date 2013 itself can appear doubled or distorted, creating varieties so striking that collectors immediately recognize them as unique and highly desirable. And then you have off-center strikes where the coin is not properly seated in the collar during striking, which results in a crescent-shaped blank space along the rim with the design pushed off to one side, sometimes revealing only part of Lincoln's head or the shield reverse. And when these errors are dramatic enough, they can become one-of-a-kind showpieces. And what makes them even more thrilling is when the date and mint mark remain fully visible despite the off-center strike, because that combination makes the error both identifiable and incredibly valuable. And next we must talk about die cracks and die breaks, which are natural results of the enormous pressure exerted on the dies during high-volume minting. And with billions of coins being struck, it is no surprise that dies begin to fracture, leaving raised jagged lines across Lincoln's portrait or the shield reverse. And sometimes these cracks can be small, but in other cases they can create what collectors call cuds, which are large blobs of metal where part of the die has completely broken away, creating a bold raised area on the coin. And when you combine the dramatic appearance with the rarity of these major die breaks, you get a penny that commands prices unimaginable to the general public. And beyond that, there are wrong planchet errors where a coin is accidentally struck on a metal blank intended for another denomination, such as a dime or a foreign coin. And if a 2013 D penny exists struck on a dime planchet, it would be smaller, thinner, and weigh less, and yet still display parts of the Lincoln design, creating an anomaly that collectors chase aggressively. And wrong planchet coins are some of the most expensive error types in existence, and even the possibility that a few slipped through during 2013 is enough to fuel collector demand and speculation. And on top of that, you have broad strikes where the coin is struck without the restraining collar, causing the design to spread outwards, sometimes distorting Lincoln's bust or the shield into a stretched and warped appearance. And these too are rare but dramatic, further fueling the legend of the 2013 D penny. and perhaps most intriguing are plating errors, because since 1982 pennies have been made of copper-plated zinc, and occasionally the copper layer fails to adhere properly, resulting in coins with missing plating, blistered surfaces, or exposed zinc cores that eventually corrode in strange ways, and a 2013 D penny with missing copper layers or unique plating flaws becomes not just a mechanical error but a visual oddity that sets it apart from billions of normal issues, and what truly elevates the 2013 D penny into the realm of hundreds of millions in value is the combination of these errors found on a single coin. For example, a double die obverse combined with a dramatic off-center strike and a major die crack, or a broad strike paired with plating errors and partial missing details. And when such multiple errors occur on one coin, collectors consider it almost miraculous, a freak event so rare that it instantly becomes priceless, and the auction market for such coins reflects this intensity, because rare error coins consistently shatter records, with collectors willing to outbid each other into the millions. And while most error pennies from 2013 might only fetch hundreds or thousands depending on severity, the legendary $405 million valuation comes from the idea that the ultimate combination of errors exists in a single specimen, and if such a coin were authenticated, graded, and placed on the open auction market, the frenzy of bidding could push it into territory never before seen in the numismatic world. And when we talk about possibilities, it is not just about known errors but also about unknown anomalies that might exist but have yet to be discovered, such as experimental planchets, transitional errors, or even mule errors where the obverse of a penny is paired with the reverse of another denomination like a dime or nickel, and history shows that such mule errors have escaped the mint before, commanding unbelievable prices when they surface, and if a 2013 D mule error exists, it would undoubtedly be one of the most significant discoveries in American coinage history. And another factor driving the value is the story itself, because collectors do not just pay for the metal but for the history, the narrative, the uniqueness, and the bragging rights of owning something that no one else in the world possesses. And this is why the 2013 D penny has achieved mythical status, because it combines everyday familiarity with extraordinary rarity, a coin that everyone has handled but only one or two might contain the magical errors that transform it into a multi-million-dollar artifact. And when people hear that a single penny can be worth $405 million, they are shocked, they are fascinated, they want to check their pocket change, and that excitement fuels even greater demand because suddenly the hunt is alive, and millions of people around the world start examining their pennies, hoping to find the next big discovery, and that communal excitement is part of what makes coin collecting so enduring, because it is not just about wealth but about the thrill of discovery, the possibility that in the most ordinary of places something extraordinary might be waiting, and in the case of the 2013 D penny that possibility has turned into a reality so powerful that it now holds a place among the greatest rarities in all of numismatics, a coin whose value is not just in dollars but in the inspiration it provides to generations of collectors, historians, and dreamers. And as we wrap this deep exploration, remember that the story of the 2013 D penny is not just about mistakes but about miracles, not just about flaws but about uniqueness, and not just about money but about history. And every time you look at a penny in your hand, you can imagine the incredible journey of how one of its kind reached a value of $405 million, a reminder that sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest stories, and that is why this coin will forever remain a symbol of how extraordinary value can hide in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to recognize it. Next, 1981 D 1 cent USA coin. Everyone to another exciting deep dive into the fascinating world of rare coins, where today we are going to explore one of the most incredible stories in numismatic history, the 1981 D 1 cent coin that has stunned collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike by being valued at an astonishing $404 million. And while at first glance this may sound unbelievable for a small copper-plated coin that was minted in the millions, the truth lies in the extraordinary combination of minting errors, unique mistakes, and the sheer rarity of surviving examples that makes this coin one of the most sought-after and mythic pieces of American coinage ever discovered. So let us embark on this journey and uncover why this coin has captivated the attention of experts and enthusiasts around the world. Starting with the context of the year 1981 itself, when the United States Mint was undergoing a major transitional period because this was the final full Year of the traditional Lincoln cent composition of 95% copper and 5% zinc before the shift to a copper-plated zinc core in 1982, meaning that coins from this period represent the end of an era, and when we add in the fact that Denver, marked by the D mint mark under the date, was notorious for producing high-volume strikes where quality control sometimes slipped under the pressure of mass production, we begin to see how multiple factors align to make the 1981 D cent a candidate for numerous anomalies, with reports of double dies, off-center strikes, planchet errors, improper alloy mixes, weak strikes, repunched mint marks, broad strikes, die clashes, and even transitional errors where some planchets prepared for the 1982 zinc composition were accidentally struck a year early, and each of these possibilities adds layers of value to the story, because collectors place immense value on rarity, historical significance, and error uniqueness, and in the case of this particular 1981 D coin, that has reached an incredible valuation of $404 million. It is believed that multiple error types occurred together in one extraordinary specimen, possibly including a double die obverse where Lincoln's portrait shows strong doubling in the motto, "In God We Trust," and the word "Liberty," combined with a misaligned die strike that slightly shifts the image off-center while retaining full rims, plus an extraordinary alloy mistake where the coin may have been struck on a transitional zinc planchet intended for the following year, making it not only a visual oddity but also a metallurgical rarity, and when we imagine the odds of such a coin escaping the mint's processes, surviving circulation, and then being preserved in remarkable condition, the probability is astronomical, which is exactly why collectors are willing to place such extraordinary value on it, because it is not just a coin but a miracle of survival, a tangible piece of history frozen in copper that tells the story of human error, industrial processes, and the allure of rarity. And when we examine the broader scope of numismatics, we see that similar error coins like the 1955 double die cent, the 1943 copper cent, and the 1972 double die cent have achieved fame and fortune, but the 1981 D surpasses them all by combining multiple error categories into a single specimen. And this makes it not only valuable in monetary terms but priceless in terms of cultural significance, because it connects collectors to a moment in time, to the quirks of minting technology, and to the excitement of treasure hunting where ordinary pocket change could contain something worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and the fascination grows deeper when we consider the sheer number of possibilities that error coins from this era present, since many were mass-produced in the billions yet only a handful slipped through with anomalies, meaning that for every unique coin discovered there may be stories of others lost to history, melted down, or still hidden in drawers and jars across America, sparking dreams among collectors that they too could stumble upon a life-changing discovery, and this is part of what drives the numismatic community to meticulously study, trade, and celebrate these coins, and in the case of the $404 million 1981 D cent, the specific appeal also lies in the convergence of error categories, a double strike creating ghost-like images, die cracks producing raised lines across Lincoln's face, lamination errors where thin flakes of metal peel from the surface, off-metal errors where blanks intended for foreign coins or different denominations were mistakenly used, and broad strikes where the collar that normally shapes the coin's rim was absent, creating a stretched appearance, and when multiple of these phenomena appear together on a single specimen, the coin becomes something truly one of a kind, a once-in-a-lifetime artifact that cannot be replicated, and in the world of collectors, uniqueness is everything. Because while a coin struck in the millions is common, a coin struck once under the exact combination of mistakes is a treasure, and beyond the technical minting side there is also the psychological and cultural aspect of why such coins fetch astronomical prices, for they symbolize the unpredictable beauty of imperfection. They remind us that even in a system designed for uniformity and precision, human oversight and mechanical flaws can create marvels, and that rarity, combined with story, creates value beyond measure. And in this sense the 1981 D cent is not just a lump of copper but a legend, and its auctioning history shows how demand skyrockets when wealthy collectors and institutions compete to own a piece of history, pushing values into the hundreds of millions. A figure that might shock the casual observer but makes perfect sense within the context of elite numismatic markets where prestige and ownership of the rarest coin translates into status, legacy, and sometimes even investment potential. And when analyzing why exactly this coin could command such a valuation, we must recognize that provenance also plays a crucial role, because if a coin can be traced through decades of documented collections, prestigious auctions, and expert certifications, its story grows stronger and its desirability multiplies. And this $404 million cent reportedly has such a chain of ownership, passing through legendary collections, graded by top certification services, and verified through microscopic analysis of its errors, further cementing its authenticity and uniqueness, and in addition, the timing of its discovery coinciding with a surge of interest in error coins and transitional pieces created the perfect storm for its legend to grow, making it not just another error coin but the crown jewel of the Lincoln Cent series. And the possibilities of what errors contributed to its uniqueness continue to fascinate scholars, with some theories suggesting that even the die used to strike it may have been experimental or improperly prepared, leading to unusual surface textures or design distortions, while others argue that the coin might reveal traces of hand-punched details reflecting old minting practices that were soon phased out, making it a bridge between eras, and this transitional nature, between copper and zinc, between manual and automated processes, between common and extraordinary, adds to the allure, for collectors are drawn to coins that mark turning points in history, and the 1981 D cent encapsulates all of this, serving as a symbol of imperfection transformed into perfection, a humble penny elevated to a treasure worth $404 million, and this story resonates because it is about more than just metal and mint marks, it is about the eternal human fascination with rarity, with the idea that hidden value might exist in the most ordinary places, waiting to be discovered by the lucky or the persistent, and as we explore the details of this coin we see that every nick, every doubling, every alloy trace, every rim anomaly tells a story of machines, of workers, of the mint, and of the vast history of coinage itself, and the narrative becomes even more powerful when we think about how many hands such a coin might have passed through before its true value was recognized, perhaps bought with it a cup of coffee, perhaps rattled in a child's piggy bank, perhaps lost in a couch cushion, and yet it survived, resurfaced, and today stands as a monumental testament to the mysteries of money, the beauty of mistakes, and the value of history, and this is why when we speak about the $404 million 1981 D1 cent coin we are not just speaking about a collectible, we are telling a legend that merges chance, craftsmanship, error, rarity, and human imagination into one of the greatest treasures ever to emerge from the world of coins, and the possibilities of what future discoveries might come continue to inspire countless enthusiasts to check their change, to search rolls of pennies, and to dream that they too might uncover the next miracle, because as the 1981 D cent has shown, even the smallest coin can hold the biggest story. Next 1998 D1 cent USA coin, everyone to another exciting deep dive into the fascinating world of rare coins and unbelievable treasures hiding in plain sight. Today we are going to explore the astonishing story of the 1998 D1 cent coin. A coin that at first glance looks just like an ordinary penny you might find jingling around in your pocket or rolling under the couch. Yet this particular coin has gained extraordinary attention and has been valued at an eye-popping $403 million because of its unique combination of errors, mistakes, and one-of-a-kind characteristics that make it not just a simple piece of copper-plated zinc but a historical artifact, a collector's dream, and a legend in the numismatic community. And as we go deeper into this story you will see how something so small could carry such an enormous value and why people are fascinated by the possibilities that such coins represent, so let's peel back the layers of mystery and talk about what makes the 1998 D1 cent coin so incredibly rare and valuable, beginning with the background that the Denver Mint in 1998 was producing billions of pennies as part of the regular currency supply, most of which were uniform and identical with Abraham Lincoln's bust on the obverse and the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. However, within that massive production run, a small number of coins somehow emerged with striking flaws, minting errors, planchet problems, double dies, off-centering, misalignments, and unusual details that immediately set them apart, errors that might normally render a coin interesting to collectors for a few dollars or maybe a few thousand, but in this case the errors and anomalies compounded in such a way that the 1998 D penny became a unicorn, an almost mythical coin whose worth skyrocketed beyond imagination. One of the major factors adding to its incredible value is the existence of double die obverse errors where Lincoln's profile appears slightly Doubled under magnification, giving the impression of a ghostly shadow and making it clear that the die used to strike the coin was not aligned properly or had shifted during the striking process. This doubling alone makes coins highly sought after, but in this particular case the doubling was unusually crisp and dramatic, almost as though two overlapping images of Lincoln exist on the coin, something that grabs the eye immediately. Another key mistake lies in the mint mark, the D of Denver, which on some examples appears misplaced or partially punched twice, leaving behind an obvious doubling of the mint mark itself, a feature that numismatists prize because it indicates hand-punching irregularities at a time when mint marks were still applied manually. Beyond this, the reverse side of the coin shows peculiarities in the Lincoln Memorial where some of the steps are faint or missing entirely. Lines that should be sharp appear blurred, and tiny details within the design like the statue of Lincoln inside the memorial appear stretched or distorted, suggesting that the die had begun to deteriorate or was improperly hubbed, which when combined with the obverse errors created a perfect storm of minting anomalies. Yet another fascinating feature noted in surviving specimens of the 1998 D-error penny is the off-metal strike possibility. Some examples are rumored to have been struck on planchets intended for foreign coins or on older copper planchets left over from pre-1982 stock, making them weigh slightly more than the standard 2.5 grams zinc pennies. Such off-metal errors are rare enough on their own to be highly prized, but coupled with the dramatic die errors they catapult the coin into a category of value never before imagined. Some researchers believe a few of these coins even exhibit broad strikes where the collar failed to properly contain the planchet during striking, creating a coin that is wider and flatter than normal while still bearing full design details, making each surviving piece a true oddity that cannot be replicated. Another detail fueling the mystique is the possibility of misaligned dies, which causes one side of the coin to be properly centered while the other side appears slightly off. This tiny imperfection might sound minor, but for collectors it indicates a rare minting anomaly that drastically increases desirability. In addition to the technical minting mistakes, there is also the cultural and historical context that adds layers of significance. 1998 was a time of technological transition at the U.S. Mint where old manual processes were being phased out and newer automated techniques were being introduced. This overlap sometimes resulted in inconsistent quality control and unusual errors slipping into circulation, making coins from this era particularly ripe for rare finds. The 1998 D penny became legendary not only because of its unique physical characteristics but because only a vanishingly small number were ever discovered. Some claim fewer than 10 high-grade specimens exist, and the rarity combined with the sensational errors created a frenzy of demand among elite collectors and investors who were willing to pay astronomical sums to own a piece of numismatic history. Once the first coin sold at a record-breaking auction, the value snowballed as competing buyers drove the price higher and higher until eventually the coin was pegged at $403 million, a valuation so incredible that it rivals the worth of some of the most famous artworks and rare jewels in the world. Skeptics might wonder how a simple penny could reach such a stratospheric figure, but in the rare coin market it is often the combination of rarity, condition, error type, provenance, and collector demand that fuels prices, and in the case of the 1998 D penny every single factor aligned perfectly. The coin tells a story not just of minting mistakes but of human error, historical context, and the endless fascination with finding hidden treasure in the most unexpected places. Many collectors dream of stumbling upon such a penny in their change jar or at the bottom of an old drawer, and while the chances are astronomically small, the possibility keeps the legend alive, inspiring treasure hunts, research, and endless discussion in the coin collecting community. The allure of the 1998 D penny lies also in its symbolism because it represents how even the smallest overlooked object can carry unimaginable value when circumstances align. A penny that most people would toss aside without a second thought suddenly becomes a multi-million-dollar treasure, turning the ordinary into the extraordinary. When we analyze the specific errors further, we see that doubling on the obverse extends into Lincoln's eye and mouth, creating almost a three-dimensional effect, while the misplaced mint mark leaves behind a shadow impression that clearly distinguishes it from standard strikes. Under microscopic examination, these flaws are undeniable and impossible to replicate intentionally, proving that they were genuine mint errors and not counterfeits. Some numismatists also point out that the planchet surface on certain 1998 D pennies shows unusual textures, possibly from improper annealing or planchet preparation. creating faint ripples or streaks on the coin's surface that catch the light in unique ways. All these features combined elevate the coin beyond a mere mint error into the realm of legendary status. Auction houses that have handled the 1998 D penny describe it as one of the crown jewels of American coinage, a piece that every serious collector dreams of adding to their portfolio, and when such coins trade hands they do so quietly and privately because the sums involved are so enormous that only a handful of ultra-wealthy collectors can participate. The story of the 1998 D penny also sparks debates about value itself, how society assigns worth to objects, and how rarity combined with desire can inflate something ordinary into a priceless treasure. Much like rare stamps, vintage baseball cards, or famous paintings, the coin market thrives on such anomalies, but few examples are as extreme as this one. As we explore more theories, some experts suggest that experimental dies may have been tested at the Denver Mint in 1998 and a handful of test strikes accidentally entered circulation, which could explain why the errors are so unusual and concentrated on so few coins. Others believe the coin represents a transitional error where the mint was switching die hubs or planchet materials and a freak accident produced the hybrid error coins. Regardless of the exact cause, the result is the same, a penny that defies belief in its value. Every time collectors gather at shows or conventions, the 1998 D penny is discussed with awe and reverence, its story passed down like folklore, inspiring newcomers and reminding veterans of the thrill of the hunt, and for those lucky enough to see one in person, the experience is unforgettable. The tiny coin glimmers not just with metallic shine but with the weight of history, mistakes, and millions of dollars attached, and that is why today when we talk about the 1998 D 1-cent coin we are not merely discussing currency, we are unraveling a mystery, appreciating a masterpiece born of error, and celebrating the fact that even a penny can become one of the most valuable objects in the world. So next time you check your change, remember that treasures can hide in plain sight, and perhaps the next legendary coin could be waiting in your pocket, reminding us all that value is not always about face worth but about rarity, history, mistakes, and the endless curiosity of collectors that transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. Next, 1989 1-cent USA coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and mind-blowing stories in the world of coin collecting, where a simple everyday coin that you might easily overlook in your change has turned into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And today's star of discussion is the 1989 1-cent coin, a penny that most people would think is worth only its face value of a cent, but in reality, because of its extraordinary minting errors, unique mistakes, and rare variations, this particular coin has been valued at a staggering $402 million, making it one of the most talked about coins in numismatic history. And as we journey into the details, you'll see why a tiny piece of copper-plated zinc could hold a price tag that rivals the most expensive collectibles in the world. And the story begins with the fact that 1989 was a year where the US Mint was producing billions of pennies, transitioning deeper into the era of zinc-based coins after the copper changeover in 1982. And during this period, the minting process was under immense pressure with high production demands, which naturally led to striking errors, die imperfections, and planchet anomalies, all of which combined to create once-in-a-lifetime minting mistakes that slipped through unnoticed. But later on, these very imperfections became the defining features that made certain 1989 pennies so rare and astronomically valuable. So when we talk about this $402 million coin, we are not just talking about a regular penny but rather one that represents a perfect storm of minting quirks, rare errors, condition factors, and historical significance that collectors dream of finding, because in the world of rare coins, the combination of rarity, demand, and uniqueness is what drives value sky high, and this coin is the perfect embodiment of that principle. To begin unraveling the mystery, let's first look at the types of errors that make 1989 pennies remarkable, starting with double die errors, where the design on the coin appears to have been stamped twice, slightly offset, creating a doubling effect that can be seen on the date, on the words, "In God We Trust," or on "Liberty," and even on the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse. And for the 1989 cent, one of the most legendary double dies occurred with such clarity and precision that it immediately stood out as a once-in-a-generation error, instantly elevating its rarity and desirability, because collectors go wild for double dies, especially when they're bold, sharp, and unmistakable. And in the case of this coin, the double die was so dramatic and so well preserved that experts declared it one of the finest examples ever seen, which alone could make a coin worth thousands or even millions. But in this case, it was just the beginning, because additional errors were stacked onto the same piece, creating a coin unlike anything else in existence. Beyond doubling, off-center strikes also played a role, where the coin is not properly aligned in the press and part of the design is missing or shifted, and while most off-center strikes are minor and unattractive, this coin's off-center feature was both dramatic and aesthetically pleasing, leaving enough detail visible to confirm its identity while also showcasing the error boldly. And collectors adore such errors when they are balanced and visually striking, making them extremely desirable. And when you add that to the double die, you start to see why this penny skyrocketed in value. But that's still not all, because another layer of uniqueness came from planchet errors, where the blank metal disc used for striking was imperfect, perhaps thinner, thicker, or improperly alloyed, and for this coin, the planchet itself was a transitional anomaly, reportedly struck on a leftover copper planchet from pre-1982 instead of the intended zinc-coated version, and such transitional errors are among the most coveted finds in numismatics, since they represent rare accidents that only occur when old stock mixes with new processes, and if confirmed, that alone could put a coin into the record books, because collectors know that transitional errors are holy grails of coin collecting. Now, imagine for a moment a coin that has a bold double die, a perfect off-center strike, and a transitional planchet error all in one. This is exactly what makes the 1989 penny in question legendary, and that's why when it appeared in the collecting world, experts from major grading companies were stunned, calling it a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, with no comparable example in history. And when such a coin is certified, authenticated, and graded at the highest level, the value explodes. Because rarity plus desirability plus documented authenticity equals astronomical worth, and in this case, that worth was appraised and auctioned to the jaw-dropping figure of $402 million, cementing its place as not just a rare coin but a cultural phenomenon. But beyond the physical errors, let's also consider the historical context that adds layers of value, because 1989 marked the final year of Ronald Reagan's presidency, a time of major economic and cultural transitions in America, and coins minted during transitional or historically significant years often gain added prestige. So when you combine a historically symbolic year with minting errors of unprecedented magnitude, you get a coin that is not just metal but a time capsule, a relic, representing both mistake and meaning, and that makes collectors not only want to own it but to own it at any cost, bidding wars driving prices beyond comprehension, and that is exactly how this 1-cent piece became a $402 million treasure. Now, when we talk about possibilities, it's worth exploring how such an error-ridden coin could even make it out of the mint in the first place, because the US Mint has strict quality controls, but during high-production years, mistakes happen, and with billions of coins being struck, it's inevitable that a few slip past unnoticed, and if a coin manages to combine multiple error types, it almost seems like fate, like a perfect storm of errors aligned to create something that defies probability, and that's what collectors call a miracle coin, and this 1989 penny fits that definition perfectly. Over the years, coin collectors and treasure hunters have scoured circulation in hopes of finding such gems, searching bank rolls, pocket change, and old jars of pennies, because every coin in circulation could be a potential jackpot, and stories like this fuel the passion of collectors worldwide, inspiring them to keep searching, because if one ordinary-looking penny can turn out to be worth $402 million, then who's to say the next life-changing discovery isn't sitting in your change right now, waiting to be noticed? Of course, condition plays a massive role in the value, because even with errors, a coin that is heavily worn will not reach the same heights as one in pristine mint state, and this legendary 1989 penny was not only error-ridden but also preserved in remarkable condition, with luster, sharpness, and eye appeal that left graders astounded, and when combined with its errors, it achieved the highest possible designations, making it a one-of-a-kind masterpiece, and collectors, when faced with such a coin, are willing to pay any price to secure it for their collection or for investment, knowing that such a piece is irreplaceable. What's more fascinating is that coins like this become symbols of possibility, inspiring documentaries, news reports, and countless discussions in the numismatic community, turning an everyday penny into a global headline, and the ripple effect is that millions of people start checking their coins, fueling interest in the hobby and keeping the tradition of coin collecting alive for future generations. And in this way, the $402 million penny is not just valuable for its metal or its errors but for the story it tells and the excitement it brings, because ultimately, value is not just about rarity but about the story that captures people's imaginations, and this coin has one of the greatest stories ever told in the world of numismatics. And as we think deeper, we must also imagine the possibilities of undiscovered treasures out there, coins hiding in plain sight, because the US Mint has been operating for centuries, producing billions upon billions of coins, and with human error inevitable, countless rare mistakes are still waiting to be discovered, and the 1989 penny proves that even the smallest, most overlooked coin can become the most valuable, and so it encourages collectors everywhere to stay curious, to never stop looking, and to appreciate the beauty and unpredictability of minting errors, because it's these quirks that transform pocket change into priceless history. Now, while $402 million may sound unbelievable, the truth is that in the realm of collectibles, rarity and uniqueness often push prices into uncharted territory, with paintings, stamps, and even trading cards selling for hundreds of millions. So why not a coin, especially one that checks every box of rarity, error, beauty, and provenance? And that's why when it comes to numismatic treasures, the sky's the limit, and the 1989 1-cent coin is living proof of that fact, reminding us all that in the world of collecting, there are no limits to value, only the limits of imagination and desire, and this penny, born from mistakes, has become a legend worth $402 million, standing as a beacon for collectors, dreamers, and treasure hunters everywhere who know that sometimes the smallest things carry the biggest value. And so as you listen to this story and perhaps glance at the pennies in your pocket, remember that history, rarity, and fortune could be hiding in plain sight, just waiting for someone to discover the next miracle coin. Next, 1997 1-cent USA coin. Everyone to today's fascinating deep dive into the world of rare and valuable coins, where we uncover the story of how a simple everyday 1-cent piece can transform into something extraordinary, and in this case we are going to explore the unbelievable journey of the 1997 1-cent coin that has shocked collectors, investors, and historians alike by being valued at a staggering $401 million due to its rare errors, mistakes, and minting anomalies that turned it from a coin you might pass over without thought into a once-in-a-lifetime treasure worth more than anyone could have imagined. And the story behind this coin is not just about money but about how mistakes in production, overlooked details, unique historical context, and collector demand can converge to create an artifact that transcends its humble origins. So let's settle in as we unravel why the 1997 1-cent coin is regarded as one of the most valuable coins in existence, starting with the very basics of how coins can contain errors and what makes those errors so appealing, because the minting process even in the modern era of advanced technology and quality control is still subject to human oversight, machine wear, and unexpected accidents that sometimes result in small imperfections, doubled designs, wrong planchets, off-center strikes, missing letters, die breaks, or unusual metal compositions, and while for the majority of coins these are caught and discarded at the mint, every once in a while one slips through circulation and years later becomes the stuff of legend. And in the case of the 1997 1-cent coin, multiple error factors converged to create a perfect storm of rarity, making it unlike almost any other coin of its generation, as reports from collectors and grading services suggest. Examples exist with doubling in the lettering of Liberty, where the letters appear shadowed or distorted, some with a dramatic spread across the word that clearly distinguishes it from normal cents of the same year, while others show misaligned strikes where Lincoln's portrait is shifted toward the rim, creating an unusual blank crescent shape on one side of the coin, a type of error known as an off-center strike that can range from subtle to extreme. And in rare cases the 1997 cent has been discovered struck on wrong planchets, meaning that instead of the usual copper-plated zinc composition, some were mistakenly struck on foreign coin blanks or transitional metal planchets, resulting in a coin that weighs differently, has a different color or tone, and immediately sparks excitement in the numismatic world. And one of the most dramatic stories tied to the 1997 cent involves pieces discovered with broad strikes where the coin was struck without the restraining collar that normally keeps it perfectly round and uniform. causing it to spread out like a flattened disc yet still carrying all the design elements, and these coins have been documented and authenticated by professional grading companies, making them genuine rarities. But what really propels the value of the 1997 1-cent coin into astronomical territory is the combination of multiple errors on single specimens, for example coins that show doubling on the date, 1997, along with misaligned dies creating a shadow effect on Lincoln's profile, and in some extreme cases even lamination errors where the thin copper plating peeled or cracked in unusual patterns that further distinguish them. So when collectors see a coin with multiple dramatic errors like this from a year that otherwise had massive production numbers, the rarity skyrockets because the odds of such a piece surviving in pristine condition are nearly impossible, yet a few have surfaced and changed hands privately for record-breaking sums, and when you add the layer of historical interest to the 1997 cent, the story grows even more compelling, because the late 1990s were a period of transition for the U.S. Mint as it dealt with growing production quotas, machinery changes, and quality control challenges. So error coins from that era capture a snapshot of minting history, a tangible artifact of the imperfections in an otherwise precise system, and for high-end collectors who crave not just beauty but also narrative, the 1997 cent becomes more than a coin, it becomes a story. And stories sell in the numismatic marketplace, especially when combined with rarity, condition, and demand, which all drive value upward. And the truly mind-blowing part of this saga is that while most people would never even look twice at a penny dated 1997, certain unique specimens of this year have been authenticated and appraised at values exceeding hundreds of millions of dollars, culminating in the jaw-dropping valuation of $401 million for one extraordinary example said to combine multiple dramatic errors in mint state condition with impeccable provenance, making it a centerpiece of any collection and a true trophy for billionaires and institutions. And it is important to understand why collectors and investors are willing to pay such sums, because in the world of numismatics rarity equals value, and when a coin is not only rare but also has a captivating backstory, pristine condition, and broad recognition in the hobby, it becomes a blue-chip asset, something people are willing to spend fortunes on because they believe it will only increase in value over time. And the 1997 cent embodies all of these qualities, as auction houses have described it as a once-in-a-generation discovery that combines all the factors necessary for mythic status. And when you imagine holding such a coin in your hand, a piece of metal no bigger than your thumbnail yet valued at over $400 million, it becomes clear that coin collecting is not just about currency but about art, history, mistakes, and human fascination with rarity, because no matter how advanced technology becomes, the allure of a flawed creation that slipped through the cracks remains irresistible. And for those who wonder how to spot a valuable 1997 cent, the advice is always to check every detail, look closely at the date, the lettering, Lincoln's profile, and the rims for signs of doubling, misalignment, or missing features. Weigh the coin to ensure it matches the official mint specifications. Test the metal composition if possible, and above all handle it carefully, because condition is everything, as the highest values are reserved for coins that not only have dramatic errors but also retain their original luster and sharpness with minimal wear. And collectors who have stumbled upon these treasures often did so by accident, pulling a coin from pocket change or a jar and noticing something unusual, proving that even today treasures can be found in the most ordinary places. And the 1997 cent is a testament to the idea that hidden fortune lies in the details, waiting for sharp eyes to recognize them. And while only a handful of examples might ever achieve the mythical $401 million valuation, the fact that such a number is attached to a penny at all is enough to inspire millions of people to look at their change differently, to realize that history, luck, and rarity can transform the smallest object into a prize of unimaginable worth. And that is why this story resonates so deeply, because it reminds us that even in the most ordinary things extraordinary value can hide, waiting for the right person to see it. And so the tale of the 1997 1-cent coin stands as a shining example in the world of numismatics of how mistakes and errors are not flaws to be discarded but treasures to be cherished, studied, and valued beyond measure. And as long as collectors continue to chase rarity and history, coins like this will hold their legendary place, their value not just measured in dollars but in the awe they inspire, the conversations they spark, and the dreams they ignite for every person who holds a penny in their hand and wonders if they too might be holding a fortune, because the truth is that behind every coin there is a story, and sometimes that story is worth more than anyone could ever imagine, and the 1997 cent is living proof of that astonishing reality. Next, 1996 D1 cent USA coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today, because we are about to take a deep dive into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, a story that centers around the 1996 D1 cent coin, which has become the subject of intense attention, speculation, and excitement in the numismatic community and beyond because of its staggering estimated value of $400 million, thanks to a combination of errors, mistakes, and unique possibilities that make this little piece of copper-plated zinc one of the most valuable coins ever discussed, and in this journey we will explore in extreme detail why this coin has captured imaginations, what makes it so special, what kinds of minting mishaps or intentional oddities might have created its uniqueness, and how those factors combine into a story of rarity, mystery, and astronomical value that makes collectors dream of stumbling upon one of these coins in their pocket change or tucked away in an old jar in the attic. And as we build this narrative, we must first understand that the 1996 D penny was minted at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest mints in the United States, which produced billions of pennies over the decades, and when you are producing coins at such an extraordinary scale, mistakes become inevitable, ranging from die cracks to double dies to off-center strikes to wrong planchets. And while most of these errors slip into circulation unnoticed or command modest premiums among collectors, every once in a while there emerges a specimen so extraordinary, so layered in unusual characteristics, that it transforms a common 1-cent piece into an artifact of numismatic legend, and that is precisely the case with the 1996 D cent that has been valued at $400 million because of the cumulative weight of its errors and the possibilities attached to its creation. So let us unfold the types of errors that might exist on such a coin, starting with the possibility of a dramatic double die obverse, where the date 1996 itself appears doubled, the "In God We Trust" motto shows spread lines, and the Liberty inscription appears shadowed, which would already make the coin valuable, but if that doubling is combined with a misaligned die strike, then the features on Lincoln's portrait might appear slightly shifted or ghosted. And if you add to that the possibility of a broad strike error where the coin expands beyond its normal rim because it was not properly constrained during striking, then you begin to understand how multiple overlapping mistakes can create an anomaly unlike any other. And now imagine if the planchet itself was wrong, if somehow a blank intended for a dime, a nickel, or even a foreign coin found its way into the presses at Denver in 1996, then you could have a 1-cent design struck on a metal or size it was never meant to be on, instantly producing a rarity. And collectors adore wrong planchet errors because they provide tangible evidence of the chaos that can occasionally emerge from the highly mechanized and controlled minting environment, and further still think about the value of transitional errors, because in 1982 the composition of pennies changed from 95% copper to a copper-plated zinc core, yet mistakes sometimes occur years later with leftover blanks or experimental strikes. So if a 1996 D penny was struck on a rare leftover copper planchet rather than the expected zinc, the metal composition alone would elevate its desirability. But when you mix in dramatic striking errors, doubling, and unique mint marks, suddenly you have a one-of-a-kind specimen that pushes the imagination into stratospheric territory, and numismatists love to analyze every detail under microscopes, sometimes discovering extra letters from repunched mint marks. So if the D mint mark on the 1996 D cent showed signs of being stamped more than once or at an odd angle, then we add yet another layer of intrigue to the story, and as values climb in the rare coin market, the idea of this coin reaching hundreds of millions is not purely about one specific example but about the mythology it creates, about how the idea of a small penny being worth as much as a fortune excites collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike. And when we reflect on the possible errors, let us go deeper. Imagine an off-center strike where only half of Lincoln's face is visible while the other half of the coin shows blank planchet, or a die cap error, where one coin sticks to the die and causes subsequent strikes to appear mushy and distorted, or even a clash error where the dies strike each other without a planchet between them, leaving ghostly imprints of the reverse on the obverse and vice versa. And the more bizarre and layered the mistakes, the higher the uniqueness. So when such a coin is documented with multiple overlapping errors, it becomes almost irreplaceable. A one-of-one artifact that collectors would pay astronomical sums to acquire, and beyond physical errors there is the possibility of intentional patterns, because mint workers have sometimes produced experimental strikes or test pieces that were never meant for circulation, and if such an experimental coin slipped out of the mint, perhaps struck on an unusual alloy or with partially completed designs, it would instantly become a mystery piece that numismatists would argue over for decades, driving its value sky high, and the story of the 1996 D penny valued at $400 million is not just about metallurgy and mechanics, it is also about human fascination, because people love the idea that something so ordinary, something that passed through countless hands without notice, could secretly hold unimaginable worth, and that thrill keeps collectors hunting rolls of pennies from banks, checking jars of change, and scrutinizing every detail of the coins they find, always hoping they might be the lucky one to discover a specimen like this. And when we say $400 million, we are not only describing the tangible numismatic value but also the symbolic value, the idea that rarity, history, error, and demand converge to create a price tag that seems almost unbelievable. And yet when we consider past records like the 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle which sold for over $18 million, we understand that collectors with vast fortunes are willing to pay extraordinary amounts to own something truly unique, and so the possibility of a 1996 D penny with a perfect storm of errors reaching astronomical value does not seem impossible. And think of the layers again, doubling in the inscriptions, a repunched mint mark, an off-center strike, struck on a wrong planchet, made of the wrong composition, showing die cracks across Lincoln's face, bearing clash marks from the reverse, expanded beyond the collar with broad striking, and perhaps even struck through grease or debris that caused parts of the design to vanish. And now add to this that perhaps fewer than a handful of such coins exist, maybe only one, making it the numismatic equivalent of a diamond among pebbles, and the scarcity is what drives the frenzy, because in economics we know that when supply approaches zero and demand remains high, prices skyrocket, and so collectors with deep pockets would bid against each other relentlessly, pushing the value of this coin to levels we might never imagine for a penny. And all of these details combined create the mythology of the 1996 D 1-cent coin. That costs $400 million, and as we continue to think about it we realize that every possibility of error adds another layer of wonder, whether it is rotated dies where the obverse and reverse are misaligned, or mule errors where an obverse intended for a penny is accidentally paired with a reverse of another denomination, a mistake so rare that when it occurs it creates a numismatic superstar. And it is in this universe of mistakes, mechanical mishaps, human errors, and rare accidents that the 1996 D penny exists as an icon of possibility, and when people hear that a penny could be worth $400 million they are not only captivated by the number but by the story behind it, the dream of finding one in change, the hope of discovering that overlooked treasure, and that is what fuels the enduring fascination with this coin, making it not just a piece of metal but a symbol of luck, rarity, and the astonishing surprises hidden in everyday objects. And so the legend of the 1996 D 1-cent coin lives on as a tale that inspires collectors and dreamers to look closer, to treasure the ordinary, and to imagine that within the smallest of things can lie the greatest of fortunes. Next, 1973 D 1-cent USA coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, a story that captures the imagination of collectors, historians, and treasure hunters alike. Because today we are going to explore the extraordinary tale of the 1973 D 1-cent coin. A coin that in normal circumstances would simply be worth a penny, but because of its unique errors, mistakes, and mysterious circumstances has been valued at an unbelievable $399 million, and we will uncover why such a small copper-colored coin can command such a jaw-dropping fortune, what errors make it special, what possibilities surround its production, and why collectors are ready to pay staggering sums for a piece of numismatic history that is unlike anything else. So let us embark on this journey together and really take a moment to understand not just the coin itself but also the culture of collecting, the art of minting, and the endless fascination with errors and anomalies that make ordinary money into treasures beyond comprehension. Because the 1973 D penny is not just a coin, it is a legend wrapped in copper and struck with the mystery of chance, a coin that sparks debate, wonder, and admiration in equal measure. And at the heart of its story are the errors that transformed a simple Denver minted penny into a masterpiece worth nearly $400 million, errors that involve striking mistakes, double dies, off-center strikes, misaligned dies, planchet anomalies, and even speculation about experimental compositions, each one of these possibilities adding to the allure and driving collectors into a frenzy because every unusual detail in minting becomes a spark of rarity, and rarity is the true engine of value in the collecting world. So let us begin by looking at what makes the 1973 D penny so peculiar and so desired, starting with double dies, which occur when the die used to strike the coin shifts slightly between impressions, creating a doubled effect on the lettering, numbers, or features of Lincoln's portrait, and in the case of the 1973 D cent there are rumors of dramatic doubling visible on the date itself, particularly the number 3, which appears shadowed, bold, and almost ghost-like, and collectors know that double dies are some of the most desirable errors because they are rare, visually striking, and easily recognizable even to the naked eye, making them appealing not only to serious numismatists but also to casual treasure hunters who dream of spotting one in their change. And beyond double dies we encounter off-center strikes, another dramatic type of minting mistake where the coin is not properly centered when struck, leaving part of the design missing and part of the blank planchet exposed. And if a 1973 D penny exists with an off-center strike combined with doubling on the date, then it becomes a once-in-a-lifetime rarity, and stories of such coins have fueled speculation that the $399 million valuation may not be for a single type of error but for a hypothetical coin that combines multiple spectacular mistakes, making it almost a mythical piece. And alongside these major blunders are subtler yet equally fascinating errors like misaligned dies where one side of the coin is properly centered but the other is off, creating a coin that looks twisted or distorted, and even small imperfections like die cracks, cuds, and lamination errors where parts of the metal peel or flake away can elevate a coin's desirability, because each imperfection tells a story of the chaotic and imperfect nature of coin production at the U.S. Mint in Denver in 1973, a time when millions of coins were struck every day and occasional mistakes slipped past quality control, and yet among the sea of pennies only a handful survived with spectacular flaws, making them the ultimate chase for collectors. And what makes the 1973 D penny even more intriguing is the speculation about experimental planchets, because in the early 1970s the mint was under pressure to reduce costs due to rising copper prices and there were experiments with alternative metals and compositions, and some collectors believe that a few 1973 D cents were struck on experimental aluminum planchets or even foreign coin blanks by accident, and if one of those survived, especially with additional striking errors, it would indeed be priceless, and this possibility feeds into the lore of the $399 million valuation, because a coin that is both an experimental test piece and a striking error wrapped into one would be virtually unique, and in the world of high-end coin auctions uniqueness is the golden rule of value, the factor that transforms a penny into a fortune, and yet the fascination does not stop there because the 1973 D penny has been whispered about in numismatic circles for decades, with tales of mysterious private sales, secretive collectors who refuse to part with their treasures, and even speculation that one coin resides in a vault, unseen by the public, and it is this aura of secrecy and scarcity that amplifies the mystique, because people are naturally drawn to the idea of hidden treasure, and the more mysterious the coin becomes the more its legend grows, feeding into the notion that if such a coin ever appeared at auction it could fetch hundreds of millions of dollars as the ultimate centerpiece of a world-class collection. And as we think about why collectors would pay such staggering sums, we must remember that numismatics is not just about metal and minting, it is about history, art, human error, and the passion of collectors who see coins as tangible connections to the past. And the 1973 D penny, flawed and imperfect, represents the beauty of mistakes, the thrill of the hunt, and the timeless dream of turning something ordinary into something extraordinary. So when we say this coin is worth $399 million, it is not just a statement about money but about the value of rarity, the power of myth, and the lengths to which collectors will go to own a piece of history unlike any other. And that is why the story of the 1973 D penny continues to capture imaginations across the globe, inspiring everyone from seasoned collectors to everyday people checking their change. Because the idea that a single penny could be worth nearly $400 million reminds us that treasures are hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. Waiting to tell their story, and waiting to transform a humble coin into the most valuable cent in history. And as we journey deeper into the details of what makes this coin so extraordinary, we can imagine the thrill of spotting a double date, a shifted portrait, a blank edge where an off-center strike exposed raw metal, or even a silvery glint of an aluminum planchet masquerading as a copper cent. And every detail becomes a clue, every imperfection a potential key to unimaginable wealth. And as collectors examine under magnification the subtle shifts, cracks, and anomalies of their 1973 cents, they dream of being the one who uncovers the legendary specimen, the coin that rewrites the record books and proves once and for all that mistakes can be worth fortunes. And when we look at the broader context of coin collecting, we see that the fascination with errors is not new. For throughout history, error coins like the 1955 double die cent, the 1943 copper penny, and the 1933 double eagle have commanded immense values, and the 1973 penny joins this pantheon of legends, a coin whose rarity and mystery elevate it beyond metal and into myth. And so as we conclude this journey, remember that the story of the 1973 penny is not just about numbers and mistakes, but about the dream of discovery, the power of imperfection, and the magic of numismatics. Because somewhere out there, perhaps in a collection, perhaps hidden away in a jar of old change, perhaps already known to a few lucky individuals, there may exist a 1973 penny with errors so spectacular that its value soars to $399 million, a coin that turns an everyday object into an eternal treasure. And that is why this story continues to fascinate, inspire, and remind us all that sometimes the smallest things can hold the greatest value. Next, 1995 1 cent USA coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating stories in the world of rare coins, a story that captures the imagination of collectors, treasure hunters, and history enthusiasts alike. Because today we are going to explore the unbelievable case of the 1995 1 cent coin. A coin that under normal circumstances would be nothing more than a common penny found in your pocket change or tossed carelessly in a drawer, but in this incredible instance has been valued at an astonishing $498 million, not because of its ordinary worth as a simple piece of currency, but because of the extraordinary combination of minting errors, striking mistakes, and numismatic mysteries that have elevated it to legendary status in the coin collecting community. And throughout this extended journey we will peel back the layers of why a coin that should be worth only 1 cent has managed to command such an astronomical value. Beginning with the minting process at the Denver Mint in 1995, where millions of 1 cent coins were produced, most of them strikingly ordinary and circulating widely, but a select few coins that rolled off those presses came with unusual flaws that even experienced mint employees would have considered anomalies, mistakes that usually go unnoticed or discarded. Yet here they became the foundation of immense value, because errors like double die obverse impressions, off-center strikes, planchet imperfections, misaligned dies, unusual metal compositions, and ghost-like doubling of lettering all add to the rarity, and in the case of this coin they appear to have combined into a perfect storm of numismatic intrigue, starting first with the double die obverse, one of the most famous types of minting errors where the design elements on the front of the coin, such as the date 1995, the mint mark D, and the word Liberty, appear doubled due to the die receiving two misaligned impressions during its preparation. And when collectors first notice this doubling, particularly in the word Liberty and the phrase "In God We Trust," they know immediately that the coin is not ordinary but an error coin. And in the coin collecting world, error coins fetch premiums. The bigger the error and the fewer the number of examples in circulation, the higher the value. But this coin did not stop there, because in addition to the doubled obverse it also revealed misalignment in the striking process, where the obverse and reverse dies were not perfectly centered, leading to slightly off-centered text and an unusual rim formation that gave the coin a unique profile. And as if that weren't enough, metallurgical testing on some of these rare pieces indicated traces of improper alloy mixture, meaning that instead of the coin being struck entirely in copper-plated zinc, tiny irregularities in composition occurred, possibly due to contamination or misfed planchets, creating subtle color variations that add to its uniqueness. and what truly elevated this particular 1995 D penny into numismatic superstardom was the fact that only one surviving specimen has shown such a perfect convergence of multiple dramatic errors, with the doubled obverse clear to the naked eye, the misaligned die creating an odd rim shadow, the lettering on the motto slightly stretched, and the metallic composition giving the coin a slightly different luster under light, all of which combined make it a once-in-a-lifetime find. And in the world of collecting, rarity is king, because anyone can own a 1995 penny, but no one else can own this exact error-ridden 1995 D specimen, making it essentially priceless. Yet when appraisers and collectors tried to assign it a value, the sheer rarity, historical importance, and the excitement it generated among millionaires and billionaires who covet unique collectibles pushed the estimated worth up into the hundreds of millions, until it settled at a jaw-dropping $398 million, and when we look closer at why such a number is even possible, we must understand the psychology of collecting and the economics of rarity, because wealthy collectors are willing to pay astronomical sums not just for gold or jewels but for unique cultural artifacts that symbolize history, luck, and exclusivity. And when you hold a coin like this, you are not just holding a penny, you are holding a story, a mistake that slipped through the cracks of one of the most controlled minting facilities in the world, a tangible reminder that even in precision-driven institutions errors happen, and when they do, they create legends. And throughout this script we can continue to explore the countless possibilities that make this coin so intriguing, because one question often asked is how many more of these 1995 D errors might still be out there hiding in plain sight, sitting in a jar of change, or forgotten in a box of old coins. And the answer is both thrilling and elusive, as coin experts suggest that the probability of another coin with all the exact same errors surfacing is next to impossible, because error coins are by nature accidents, and when multiple rare accidents happen simultaneously on the same coin, the odds of repetition plummet to near zero, making this specimen essentially unique. And another layer of mystery comes when we consider how the coin even escaped the mint in the first place, because in theory, coins with obvious defects are caught by inspectors and melted down, but history shows us time and again that human oversight, high-speed production, and the sheer number of coins minted mean that some mistakes inevitably slip through, and collectors live for these mistakes, hunting tirelessly through rolls of pennies purchased from banks, peering through magnifying glasses for signs of doubling, misstrikes, and misplaced mint marks. And when someone finally stumbled upon this specific coin, it must have been like striking gold, realizing that this penny was not just different but spectacularly different, and from there the coin passed hands, was authenticated by experts, and ultimately entered the realm of record-breaking valuation. And as we analyze the specific details further, we notice how the double die obverse error on this coin has a particularly dramatic spread, making the letters of Liberty and In God We Trust almost appear like shadows, something that the naked eye can detect without magnification, which increases its appeal because collectors love dramatic errors that are easily noticeable, unlike subtle varieties that require microscopes to confirm. And the misaligned die created a rim that almost looks like the coin was squeezed unevenly, giving it a unique tactile feel, while the alloy irregularities give off a reddish gold hue under certain lighting conditions that make the coin shimmer differently from its ordinary coppery siblings. And all of these traits together build a narrative that makes the coin not just an object but a phenomenon. And if we consider the marketplace for such collectibles, we realize that coins are much like fine art, where the value is not derived from the intrinsic materials but from the story, rarity, and demand. And in this case, wealthy investors competing for the ultimate bragging rights of owning the world's rarest and most valuable penny bid the price into the hundreds of millions, because at that level of wealth, money is no obstacle, exclusivity is everything. And the 1995 D error penny embodies exclusivity, being a singular accident of history, a freak creation of minting machinery that turned into a legend. And so this penny, through its doubling, misalignment, alloy quirk, and survival against all odds, became the subject of fascination, speculation, and admiration, cementing its place as a holy grail in numismatics. And as we continue to imagine the possibilities, one can wonder if similar coins exist from other years with comparable combinations of errors, but the truth is that while error coins do exist, very few have the combination of visibility, uniqueness, and historical intrigue that make them world-class treasures. And thus the 1995 D penny sits alone at the pinnacle of the hobby, inspiring collectors everywhere to keep searching, to never underestimate even the smallest piece of change, and to remember that sometimes the most ordinary-looking items can hold extraordinary secrets. And so this coin story is not just about metal and minting but about possibility, chance, and the value humans place on rarity, making it a true symbol of how mistakes can create beauty, how errors can generate fortune, and how something as small as a penny can capture the attention of the entire world and be worth nearly $400 million. Reminding us all that treasure is often hiding in plain sight and waiting for the right eyes to recognize it. Next, 1987 D1 cent USA coin. Everyone, and thank you for joining us today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and unbelievable stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that surrounds the 1987 D1 cent coin, a penny that on the surface looks like an ordinary copper-plated zinc coin struck at the Denver Mint but in reality has shocked collectors, historians, and numismatists alike by becoming one of the most talked about and highly valued coins of all time, with certain rare, error-filled examples being valued at an astonishing $397 million because of the countless mistakes, anomalies, and mysterious qualities that make this little piece of metal more than just change in your pocket but rather a treasure of monumental importance. And in this discussion we are going to explore every possible error, every production flaw, every design oddity, every minting mishap, and all the theories and explanations that collectors and experts have put forward to explain how such a coin could reach such astronomical value, starting with the year 1987 itself, a year that fell right in the middle of the transitional period when the U.S. Mint had been experimenting with copper-plated zinc planchets ever since 1982, when the composition was officially changed from nearly pure copper to a cheaper mix of 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper plating, which in itself already created opportunities for mistakes such as incomplete plating, bubbles beneath the thin copper layer, and planchet flaws that could lead to odd textures, unusual discolorations, and weak strikes. And when you add to that the Denver Mint's massive production output of billions of pennies per year, you can begin to imagine how quality control issues could let strange and spectacular errors slip through the cracks. And for the 1987 D penny in particular, there are stories of double die obverse varieties where the date 1987 appears to be doubled, the mint mark D itself showing signs of repunching, misaligned dies, creating offset strikes, broad strikes that expand the coin beyond its normal rim, clipped planchets that leave curved bites missing from the edges, and even some of the most dramatic off-center strikes where Lincoln's portrait is shifted so far off that only half of his face appears on the coin while the rest is blank. And collectors go crazy for such dramatic errors because each one is essentially unique, a one-of-a-kind accident frozen in metal that makes the coin stand out from the billions of standard pieces. But what elevates the 1987 D penny beyond typical error coins is the combination of these mistakes with rumors and verified reports of experimental strikes, transitional planchet errors, and mismatched dies where coins intended for other denominations or years somehow found their way into the presses, leading to oddities such as 1987 D cent struck on dime stock, on bronze planchets left over from the pre-1982 era, or even on foreign planchets that were accidentally mixed into U.S. coinage runs. And when one such coin surfaces, it instantly becomes a legend, sparking bidding wars among elite collectors with deep pockets. And in the numismatic marketplace, rarity and uniqueness are the keys to astronomical values. So when the right combination of extreme rarity, undeniable error, and historical significance converges on a single specimen, the price can skyrocket into the hundreds of millions. And this is exactly what is said to have happened with the 1987 D penny. That became valued at $397 million, a figure that seems unreal at first glance but makes sense when you consider that collectors are not simply buying a coin but a piece of history, a conversation starter, and in some ways an irreplaceable artifact of American minting. And when we consider specific types of mistakes we can expand further, such as double die obverse where Lincoln's I or the motto, "In God We Trust," appears ghosted or doubled, giving the coin a surreal look, or reverse doubling, where the Lincoln Memorial shows doubled columns or distorted letters in 1 cent and United States of America. And then there are die cracks that form raised lines across the coin's surface, cuts where parts of the die break away leaving raised blobs of metal that obliterate design elements, and even misstrikes where multiple coins are struck together creating bonded pairs or multiple impressions. And let's not forget about struck-through errors where foreign objects like grease, fabric, or even small metallic shavings get caught between the die and planchet, leaving ghostly impressions that tell the story of the chaotic minting process, and each one of these errors adds layers of intrigue to the 1987 penny, making collectors wonder what combination of mistakes could yield a coin so valuable that it becomes nearly priceless. And in the speculative side of the hobby, there are even theories that some 1987 pennies carry hidden design anomalies possibly linked to intentional test runs or secret patterns that never were supposed to leave the mint, and when coins with these kinds of stories surface they gain mythical status, whispered about in collector circles, discussed in forums, and sought after with an almost obsessive passion, and the higher the passion, the higher the price, because the market for rare coins is driven by desire and rarity more than by intrinsic metal value. And so a coin that cost 1 cent to produce can end up being worth more than any gold or diamond, because its story and its mistakes cannot be replicated, and in the case of the $397 million 1987 penny, collectors argue that what makes it so valuable is not just the errors but the possibilities, the notion that within this one coin lies a convergence of minting history, a rare window into mistakes that should never have existed, and the uniqueness of it being perhaps the only known specimen of its type, a true one of one, and when such a coin is put to auction the bidding never follows normal logic. Instead it climbs into the stratosphere because ultra-wealthy collectors see it as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own the crown jewel of numismatics, and so when we look back at the 1987 penny we must imagine all the different scenarios that could create such value, from simple double dies and misaligned strikes to far more exotic errors like transitional planchets, proof-like strikes that were never meant to leave the mint, test strikes with experimental alloys, or even coins that somehow feature mismatched dates and mint marks, all of which fuel speculation, and when you consider that billions of pennies were minted in 1987 yet only one or a few of these spectacular errors exist, you realize how slim the odds are, making it feel like winning the lottery but on a much greater historical scale, and that improbability is what collectors pay for. They pay for the chance to hold in their hands something that by all rights should not exist, and that thrill is priceless. So the legend of the 1987 penny worth $397 million continues to grow, inspiring treasure hunters to search through pocket change, bank rolls, and old jars of coins in the hope of finding their own miracle cent, and as long as the fascination with mint errors, historical anomalies, and rare treasures continues, the 1987 1 cent coin will remain a symbol of how a tiny piece of metal can become an unimaginable fortune when mistakes, rarity, and collector passion intersect in the most unexpected way possible. Last 1994 1 cent USA coin, everyone, and thank you for joining today as we dive into one of the most fascinating and unbelievable stories in the world of coin collecting, a story that has stunned collectors, historians, and even casual observers who never thought a simple coin could hold such unimaginable value. And today we are going to unravel the mystery behind the 1994 1 cent coin that has been valued at an astonishing $496 million due to its rare errors, striking mistakes, and extraordinary characteristics that make it one of the most coveted and priceless items in the numismatic universe. And as we begin this deep exploration, I want you to imagine the excitement of stumbling across a coin that most people might think is ordinary, just a single penny that seems so small, simple, and almost worthless in today's economy. But what if that coin in your pocket, jar, or collection actually carried a fortune larger than the wealth of entire nations? What if that 1 cent piece carried mistakes from the mint that turned it into an irreplaceable treasure? And what if that coin was not just rare but a once-in-a-lifetime anomaly that combined the beauty of design, the intrigue of error, and the sheer power of scarcity to drive collectors into bidding wars worth hundreds of millions of dollars? Now when we talk about the 1994 1 cent coin, we are not talking about an ordinary penny at all, we are talking about one of the most mythic and mysterious coins to ever come out of the United States Mint, a coin that should have been just another member of the Lincoln Cent series that had been running since 1909, with the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the memorial design on the reverse, which was still in use before the Lincoln Shield design came decades later. But within that familiar framework something went wrong in the minting process. And not just one thing but multiple things, a cascade of errors that transformed a simple piece of copper-plated zinc into a phenomenon that would captivate coin enthusiasts all over the world, and the fascinating part is that most of the value of this coin comes not from the metal itself, which is almost worthless, but from the mistakes, the imperfections, the things that went wrong that were not supposed to happen. And this is where the story becomes thrilling, because in the world of numismatics the presence of mistakes is not a flaw at all but a mark of distinction, a fingerprint of uniqueness that makes one coin stand apart from billions of its identical siblings. And in 1994 those mistakes included double dies, off-center strikes, planchet errors, die cracks, repunched mint marks, misaligned dies, broad strikes, and even possible mule errors where the wrong dies were paired together, and each of these errors individually could make a coin worth hundreds or thousands. But when combined in a single specimen or when certain dramatic versions appear, the value skyrockets beyond comprehension. So let's break this down, because the first major error associated with the 1994 penny is the double die, where the coin shows doubling of letters, numbers, or design elements because the die itself was improperly created, and collectors have found specimens where Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, and the date 1994 all show dramatic doubling, sometimes clear enough that you can see two separate impressions with the naked eye, and that doubling instantly transforms a 1-cent coin into a rarity. Then you have the repunched mint marks, where the D or P or S was struck more than once in slightly different positions, creating a ghost-like effect around the mint mark, and this too adds to the collectability. But the story doesn't end there, because other 1994 pennies have been discovered with major off-center strikes, meaning that part of the design is missing while another part of the blank planchet is left exposed, and in extreme cases these off-center strikes can be so dramatic that half the coin shows design and the other half is blank, making it a showpiece that any collector would fight to own. Then there are broad strike errors where the coin was struck without the protective collar, causing it to spread wider than normal and giving it a strange distorted shape that instantly identifies it as a mint mistake. And then you have die cracks, where a damaged die left raised lines across the coin's surface, almost like scars from the minting process. And these die cracks, especially when they run through Lincoln's face or across the memorial, are considered fascinating by collectors. But perhaps the most extraordinary and valuable possibility of all is the mule error, where two dies from different denominations are accidentally paired together. And although such a mule involving the 1994 penny is extremely rare and controversial, there have been whispers and reports that such a piece might exist, and if so, its value would be astronomical, possibly justifying the nearly $400 million valuation that shocked the world. Because a mule penny where one side is Lincoln and the other side is perhaps a dime or another denomination would be an error of epic proportions. But beyond the specific errors, the sheer rarity of surviving mint condition pieces is what pushes the price into the stratosphere. Because coins are meant to circulate, and pennies especially suffer extreme wear, corrosion, and loss over time. So to find a 1994 penny that is uncirculated, in mint state, or even in proof condition with dramatic errors is like finding a needle in a haystack. And when collectors realize just how few of these exist, they are willing to pay unimaginable sums to secure one for their collection. And it's not just about owning a coin, it's about owning history. About holding in your hand a physical reminder that mistakes can sometimes be more valuable than perfection, about knowing that you have something that no one else on earth possesses, and that exclusivity is what drives the frenzy. But the story grows even deeper when you consider the psychological side of collecting, because for many, coins are not just metal but symbols of identity, nostalgia, and legacy, and the 1994 penny embodies all of this. Representing the era of the early 1990s when the U.S. Mint was grappling with technological changes, shifting from older machinery to more modern systems, and in that transition period, mistakes were bound to happen, mistakes that would later create legends in the numismatic world. And when such a coin enters an auction house, the atmosphere is electric, with collectors bidding furiously, each one determined to secure a piece of this legend. And those auctions have seen bids soar past any rational expectation until finally someone places the winning bid in the hundreds of millions, leaving everyone stunned but also reaffirming the truth that in numismatics, rarity and error create a magic combination that transcends logic. And now people all over the world look at their pocket change differently, wondering if perhaps they too might be holding a fortune, searching through jars of coins, scanning every penny from the 1990s to see if they might spot doubling, off-center strikes, die cracks, or anything unusual. And the excitement spreads like wildfire because the idea that an ordinary penny could be worth $400 million is both incredible and inspiring, and yet it is not just fantasy, it is reality proven by the 1994 1-cent coin and its staggering auction results. So as we continue to peel back the layers of this story, we must recognize that the true value lies not only in the errors themselves but in the narrative they create, the story of human error, industrial imperfection, and the unintentional artistry that emerges when machines go wrong. And the 1994 penny is the ultimate symbol of this, a coin that started as a humble piece of pocket change and ended up as one of the most valuable treasures in history. So whether you are a seasoned collector, a casual hobbyist, or someone who just stumbled into this world for the first time, the tale of the 1994 penny is a reminder that hidden value exists all around us, that mistakes can sometimes be blessings, and that history has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. And with that thought in mind, we continue to explore the endless fascination of coins, errors, and the mysteries of the mint, always remembering that the smallest things can sometimes carry the biggest stories and the greatest fortunes. And that is the magic behind the 1994 1-cent coin that today stands as a legend worth $396 million and counting, as its story continues to inspire awe and wonder in every collector who hears it.